The Leafs roster is not good enough to win a Stanley Cup as they stand right now. And the one area that everyone keeps looking to that they need to improve if they're going to have any chance is on defense. Well, Elliotte Friedman on the 32 Thoughts podcast earlier today speculated that there's a couple of defensemen who might be available that Leafs fans will love. Welcome back to Third Man In. I'm Zack Phillips, and today we're going to be breaking down the recent reports from a at least credible source here in Elliotte Friedman on the 32 Thoughts podcast that the Toronto Maple Leafs will have some interest in some defensemen who will be available out of Calgary. So we'll touch on their availability, which defensemen would be there, which ones they might go after, and the one name that continues to be linked to the Toronto Maple Leafs. So let's get into it first and foremost. We saw a report here from Elliotte Friedman coming from NHL Watcher, NHL_Watcher on Twitter, where he was pulling a quote from Friedman's podcast saying, Calgary could have three defensemen on the market. Three good defensemen on the market. Noah Hanifin, Chris Tanev, and Nikita Zadorov. It would be hilarious to see Calgary bailing out Toronto and Edmonton on one level. Well, first and foremost here, if you're looking into this situation with the Calgary Flames, they're currently sitting third last in the Pacific Division, 3-7-1. This is coming off a season where they had just missed the playoffs last year, only missing by a couple of points, but it was on the heels of a season where Huberdeau dropped off at basically by 60 points. Nazem Kadri's point production significantly dropped. You lost Matthew Tkachuk. You lost Johnny Gaudreau. The team was going in a different direction, but they're still thinking, hey, we're going to be fine. We just didn't get goaltending this year. Markstrom was in net with a below 900 save percentage, not good enough from a guy who is a legitimate Vezina caliber goaltender. So you say, it's all good. If we can get a spot here where our goaltender improves, gets above 900, we only miss by a couple of points, we can get back to the playoffs. Well, he's played well, and the team in front of him has not so far this year. They changed the coach, they changed the GM, they make these moves, they tinker around a little bit, and yet this team still sits in a rough position in the standings to the point now where you got players calling them out, the fans are not happy, the media is calling them out, and now you're hearing rumblings that they might be looking to move guys ahead of the deadline. Those guys would specifically be players who are more on expiring contracts, and more importantly, those are defensemen. So as brought up there, Hanifin, Tanev, Zadorov, guys who could potentially be on the move this season. This is important because the Leafs are sitting here looking at defensemen that they need in order to improve this team. And it's a certain type of defenseman. They're not looking for just anybody. They're looking for big, mean, physical players. They're looking for some guy who comes in here and could be some type of Luke Shen fit in to this roster in terms of guys who block shots, kill penalties, hit guys, fight guys, whatever it is, somebody who's big and mean to fill into this back end of the roster to beef them up a little bit. And it feels like Calgary might just have the perfect pieces for this Leafs team. Now, here's where the second part of this gets interesting. Zadorov has now been mentioned with the Leafs team a couple of times. This tweet from Joseph Zeta at Joseph D. Zeta here on Twitter, he mentions Friedman again on the 32 Thoughts podcast. I think they're looking for D. This is in reference to the Toronto Maple Leafs. You know, the one I can see is Zadorov, and I'll bet you this. If they can find a way to get Zadorov and Tanev, I bet you they would do it. I bet you they would do both of them if Calgary was willing to do that. I really believe it, and I'll bet you. Now, I'm not going to say I'm not saying it's going to happen, but if you show me a path where that could occur, I could see it. Well, yes, okay, Elliotte, thank you. If you could show anybody a path for any type of trade, you could probably see it happening, because if there's a path to it, then yes, that would make sense for it to happen. But this is interesting because, as Joseph had also mentioned at the end of that tweet there, this is now the second time that Zadorov has been linked to Toronto by Friedman during Treliving's tenure here. Zadorov is a guy that Treliving brought into Calgary. He is the prototypical Brad Treliving defenseman in terms of big, mean, and physical. You look at the rosters that he had built out there in Calgary, they never really struggled defensively. They were always pretty good, they were mean, and they were tough as hell to play against. That was something that he had built there from a character and attitude standpoint. He loved that kind of player. Then you come here to Toronto, and he says, we need snot. He brings in Reeves, Bertuzzi, Domi. People sit here and you can still complain about some of the moves. I'm seeing a lot of stuff online about why do you bring this guy? Why do you bring that guy? Well, it feels as though he's trying to build some type of identity to this Leafs team, and that would be big, mean, physical players who will not allow you to get pushed around, and will not allow the stars to get pushed around. Now, as I've said, I think that this permeates through the top and not the bottom. You can't just bring guys in who could do that because it doesn't actually change the identity of the team. But it feels maybe as though if you bring in enough of these guys, then those top guys actually start to feel comfortable to do it and say, hey, we got a safety net here where it's not just Luke Schenn who will punch somebody's face in if something goes awry, but it's these 5, 6 other guys on our team who will jump somebody and take their teeth out if anything happens to me here. So I can turn around and cross-check that guy or slash him or tell him to piss off because he hit me in an uncomfortable spot in the corner, whatever it is. It might actually help these guys to start to develop that identity. Now, Nikita Zadorov is 6'6", 235 pounds. He's $3.75 million AAV for the rest of this season. He's a UFA at the end of the year. He is only 28 years old, and he's got no trade protection. This guy's a left-handed defenseman, but he pretty much fits exactly what the Leafs need. Now, he does not get points, but you don't need that. You've got Morgan Rielly. You got Timothy Liljegren when he's healthy. Connor Timmins when he's healthy. You've got Klingberg if that works out. You've got a bunch of defensemen here who can get points. You don't need a defenseman to hop into the spot and get points for you. The one thing I would say about Zadorov here, when people are going to say, well, Schenn, it's not like he was the most incredible player for this Leafs team. He was beloved in the locker room. Guys loved having him around, loved the character that he brought, loved what he brought to the team on the ice and off of the ice. Zadorov is a more usable player on the ice for more minutes than a guy like Luke Schenn was. He had to be a little bit sheltered in his time here. He couldn't take on tougher matchups against better lines and better players. Nikita Zadorov, to me, he can. He's not necessarily going to eat up a ton of minutes every night, but he can play in tougher roles, in tougher positions, in tougher situations in a game. So it does actually make your team better and not just meaner. I think Nikita Zadorov would be a perfect fit here. Now, he is left-handed. Chris Tanev is less so as an important of a piece here that could come back to this Leafs team. But for me, when I'm looking at Chris Tanev, I think that this is just a veteran guy, plays on the right side, kill penalties. Also, by the way, mean as hell. I wouldn't mind seeing Chris Tanev come here. Local boy. I think that would be pretty cool. But interesting to see these go down. If either of these trades could take place, I think that this is one of those ones where people would actually kind of look at somewhat to the flip side. You'd have to move money out to make this work. So you have to find someone who's going to go out the door to facilitate this, because $3.75 million for Zadorov for a team that's pressed up against the cap, space has to open up. But one thing I would say about Calgary is it's very evident that this team is not necessarily looking at, hey, let's get better right now. If you're just going to flip out a bunch of UFAs, which might include Noah Hanifin, if Noah Hanifin is on your list of guys who could be going out the door, you're probably not looking at, hey, let's be really good next season. So you could give them serviceable players who could fit in within the next year, 2 years, but aren't these incredible NHL roster ready players right now. So maybe it's prospects, maybe it's a bunch of picks. Someone does have to come out of here to open up that money, but I don't feel like you're going to be looking at a Nikita Zadorov, Chris Tanev trade where you're giving up a boatload going the other way to make that work. So I don't think that this is going to take a massive chunk out of the Leafs to make this work. Interested to see how this plays out. I'm interested to see your thoughts. If you think Nikita Zadorov would be a good fit here, if you want this to happen, if you like the idea of Chris Tanev. I mean, obviously for me, I'd probably rather have Noah Hanifin come here. He's a top 4 defenseman instead of these guys. But I don't think that that's going to be as easy to make work. More money, term. He's going to require a contract, and he's just a better player, so it's going to require more going out the other way. But that's obviously number one. These next 2 guys, to me, I think are both really good fits, and I wouldn't just settle on Tanev. I'd be aiming for Nikita Zadorov. Let me know in the comments below your thoughts. If you did enjoy the video, hit that like button, subscribe here to the channel, and as well, turn on notifications here so you get notified every time videos just like this one drop, as well as when live streams happen here on this channel. Thank you so much to everyone who watched here. Hopefully you enjoyed the content. Much more of this coming soon. Keep believing.